So I thought of a couple analogies in real estate, and I'm just kind of coming up with them without really writing them down or teleprompter or anything like that. And so I'm going to kind of think through it a little bit. But it reminds me of the polarity of the real estate industry right now. As we know, there's going to be more net sellers, and there's going to be property sitting on the market longer, and there's going to be more motivated sellers. And it reminds me of a two-sided marketplace. It reminds me of obviously have the wholesalers that are kind of like sellers, but they're also kind of like buyers. They can play both sides. And they're kind of in the middle as well, as I've explained in other videos. But they're not tied into the leverage so much, and maybe not emotionally as invested as much either. As we end up with motivated sellers, the market starts to crash. As we see people attend a real estate club like Monria on the first Tuesday of every month, the haves and wants at 7 p.m. We see on the microphone, we see people give their phone numbers and write down notes as far as the sellers and the buyers. And a couple parts of polarity that I wanted, the contrast and polarity that I wanted to bring up that play out. And it's just something to think about as somebody that's observing in the audience, or to self-reflect on if it's yourself. When the sellers are really, really motivated and they come with a property, their mind's going to be very constricted. So they're going to be very tied to the identity of the property, and they're not going to be in a creative state. They're not going to be very open-minded because they're probably going to be stressed out because they need to sell by a deadline or a timeline. These are some of the words that they're thinking of. And it's coming from a place of fear and so forth. And they're like, how do I get rid of these properties? They're not going to be creative. They're just literally going to be self-fulfilling prophecy of running out of options. And a wholesaler can come to them with a more creative mindset. To give you an extreme example, let's say the investor buyer shows up at the real estate club or a wholesaler, and they've meditated much of the day, and they're in a very creative, imaginative mindset. They're going to be able to see past I need to give you 50 cents on the dollar and that's my only option, that the seller thinks. They think they're stuck in a loop, like a time loop. And the wholesaler and the investor buyer think outside of time. And because they've been meditating, they're more creative. They're outside of their own head, and they're able to come up with creative solutions. They can come up with terms, and they can, push and pull a little bit from like how much down and what kind of interest rate and what kind of balloon payment and when do I make the first payment and is it vacant? Is it rented? And are the rents low? And can I add rent? And can I add square footage? And can I house hack it? Can I Airbnb it? There's so many different creative solutions that can make it a better deal when you're talking to somebody that is coming from a creative mindset. So there's a very big polarity between those two as far as how open-minded somebody is creatively. And so the motivated seller, you have to understand that they're not going to be the one that's going to be like, well, here's the 15 different options I'm offering, because they probably are not coming from that mindset. So that's one polarity that I wanted to give you to think about.